Do exploding ants exist? Yes.
There is an ant that blows itself up on purpose to protect the colony.
Scientists have watched it happen, filmed it, and even given it a name. That leaves almost nothing to the imagination. Colopius explodens. So the easy question is already answered. Exploding ants are real. But explode is doing a lot of work in this sentence. Because what actually happens is even stranger. When an enemy enters the colony territory, a rival ant or another invading insect, a small worker rushes straight towards it. It grabs onto the attacker, then it starts squeezing harder, harder, until it literally tears itself apart. Its abdomen splits open, releasing a flood of bright yellow, sticky toxic goo that coats the attacker, gluing it in place while poisoning it at the same time. This isn't an insect carrying a weapon, it is the weapon. The poison isn't hidden in some tiny pouch. Huge glands filled with toxic chemicals stretch throughout much of the ant's body. The ant spends its entire life carrying the ingredients for one final attack. And once that explosion happens, it's over. The attacker may die, the colony survives, but the ant never walks away. The explosion isn't a last resort that sometimes goes wrong. The explosion is the strategy. And these workers aren't even the colony's only defense. A second type of worker has a huge, flattened head shaped almost like a plug. When danger approaches, these ants wedge their heads into the nest entrance and refuse to move. They become living doors. One kind of worker sacrificed itself by exploding. Another sacrificed itself by becoming the barricade. The same colony has evolved completely different soldiers for completely different jobs. Which brings us to the question that actually matters. Why would evolution ever build a creature designed to kill itself? Natural selection is supposed to reward traits that help an animal survive long enough to reproduce. A gene that says, tear yourself apart and die, sounds like the worst evolutionary strategy imaginable. It should erase itself from the gene pool the very first time it gets used. And yet, exploding ants aren't some rare accident. Their entire defense depends on it. Even stranger, ants aren't the only ones. Certain termites independently evolved almost the exact same strategy, bursting themselves open to drown attackers in toxic fluid. When evolution invents the same bizarre solution twice, on completely different branches of tree of life, it usually isn't an accident. It's a strategy. So how can killing yourself ever become a winning move? The answer starts with one small detail. The ant doing the exploding was never going to have children anyway. It's a worker. Worker ants are sterile. They can't reproduce. Only the queens lay eggs. So the exploding ant isn't giving up its chance to have offspring because it never had the chance to begin with. But that only creates a bigger mystery. If a worker can't have children, what is its life actually for? The answer is simple. The colony. Every instinct a worker has is aimed towards protecting the nest, feeding its sisters, raising the queen's young, and keeping the colony alive. But why would evolution push that all the way to self-destruction? Here's the strange part. A worker ant is more closely related to her sisters than she would be to her own children. Sit with what that means. Protecting her sisters spreads more of her genes into the future than raising babies of her own ever could. Her sisters are her legacy. The colony is her future. So when a worker explodes to save the nest, she isn't throwing away her genetic success. She's producing it. In the strange arithmetic of evolution, the ant wins by exploding. And that idea quietly changes something much bigger than ants, because if dying can be a successful strategy, maybe we've been thinking about the individuals the wrong way. Step back and look at the entire colony. The queen isn't really the ruler. She's the reproductive system. The workers gather food, build tunnels, care for the young, defend the nest, and repair damage. And the exploding workers, they're the immune system. Biologists call this kind of colony a superorganism. Thousands of separate bodies working so closely together that they function as one living system. And once you see the colony that way, the explosion doesn't look like the suicide anymore. It looks like One organism sacrificing a single cell to protect itself. Right now, your own immune cells throw themselves at invading bacteria and die protecting the rest of your body. You don't mourn those cells. They were never the whole organism. They were tiny parts protecting something much larger. The exploding ant is doing exactly the same thing, not as an individual giving up its life, but as one small part protecting the larger living system it belongs to. And maybe that's the strangest discovery of all. The exploding ant doesn't just force us to rethink ants. It forces us to rethink what an individual actually is. Because when you step back, something strange happens. The more you look at the colony, the less it looks like thousands of ants. It starts looking like one animal, which leaves one final question. If thousands of separate bodies can truly become one organism, then what actually makes something an individual? Is it simply having one body? Or is it millions of living parts working together so perfectly that they become something greater than the sum of their pieces? The exploding ant doesn't answer that question. It just makes it impossible to ignore.